welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have guest Maureen St. Germain. She's going to be talking about her ability to look into the Akashic Records, something I've always been interested in. I've met a few people that have said they've had that ability, and it sounds so interesting. Especially the idea of a place where all knowledge is stored somewhere in another dimension. To me, that is such an interesting idea, and I've like I said, I've talked to mediums, I've talked to people who have said they've had this ability to access this. So this is, I think, is the first guest that we're really going to have that's talked about accessing that realm. So it'll be very interesting. Of course, we'll take phone calls into the show. If you have any questions for our guest tonight, after the second half, it'll be after the second commercial break. We'll have all the lines open so you can call in. She's on us tonight on Google Hangouts, so all the phone lines will be open. And of course, what we do every Sunday night is the World Wide Web of Weird, and we got some interesting stuff for that. All right, guys, we'll be with you in just one sec. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland. We have our guest with us here. Should be in the Google Hangouts. Let me go ahead and pull up our share screen here and make sure we got everybody with us. We got Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thank you. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday night.
I am, because I'm doing the show. Now, people, you might hear some kids in the background. Wife's not home yet, so and the Rugrats are up running around. So nothing paranormal if you hear a child's voice come through. And then, of course, we got our guest tonight with us, Maureen St. Germain. How you doing tonight, Maureen? You can go ahead.
I'm doing great. Hi. It took me a minute to unmute, but I'm very happy to be with you.
I'm awesome to have you. Thank you so much for being on the show. We even got you on Google Hangouts with us so people can see you tonight. You look great. What we do every Sunday night is a World Wide Web of Weird. Maureen, feel free to jump in with us into the craziness that is the web. All right, let's go ahead and roll into it. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we've been covering this a couple times in the World Wide Web of Weird, and it's an update. Cuban sonic attacks cause brain damage. We talked about the people who were experiencing hallucinations and weird phenomenon at the American Embassy in Cuba. And, some people thought they were sonic attacks. Some people thought the Russians were there up to no good. There's history of it, so let's roll into that. All right, so yeah, sonic attack. That's what they believe. Some people think it is. Some people are not sure. But this happened in Cuba. We've talked about it a couple times on the World Wide Web of Weird. This is from Unexplained Mysteries. The phenomenon, which has targeted embassy personnel in Havana, has sparked a breakdown of international relations between Cuba and the United States. Was first made public back in August. The attacks, which have yet to be explained, have been directly targeting hotel rooms of U.S. diplomats and have induced a range of symptoms, including hearing loss, dizziness, balance problems, visual complaints, headaches, fatigue, congenitive issues, and difficulty sleeping. Now doctors studying of some of the victims have found changes in the white matter tracts responsible enabling various parts of the brain to communicate. While the phenomenon has often been attributed to some of the form of directed acoustic weapons, it still isn't clear if this is actually the case, especially given that acoustic waves have never been known to cause these type of brain abnormalities. It's possible that sounds heard by the victims were instead a byproduct of something else. They don't need sonic devices. They could be something that's electromagnetic. There's a number of ways. the CIA, it's it's out there in Freedom of Information Acts. They know the CIA and the Russians have since the 60s experimented with these kind of weapons, and they're very dangerous and very scary. I mean, they can make you hallucinate. They can do all kinds of stuff. That's why people start wearing the tinfoil hats to keep the government out of their head. Well, they might have been onto something. It's scary. All right, number 2 in the World Wide Web of Weird is another one from Unexplained Mysteries. This one is Google AI has built another superior AI. This is just as scary to me. This Fear and Loathing in the World Wide Web of Weird tonight. The new artificial intelligence, which is known as AutoML, or Automated Machine Learning, acts as a controller neural network that can develop a child AI network for specific tasks. To demonstrate the system, Google researchers tasked AutoML with developing a child AI known as NASNet that can recognize objects, cars, trees, people, and etc. In video footage in real time. By analyzing the performance of NASNet and implementing improvements and then repeating this process thousands of times, AutoML was able to create an AI that superseded all the other versions made by humans. So AI is making better programs than humans are, and it's making little AI babies. And this has got the conspiracy people out there totally freaking out. I don't know. It's a matter of time. They're going to make these computers. They're going to be smarter and faster than us. And well, guess what? They're going to make better versions of themselves. And that can be a very scary idea to some, including myself. Probably watched Terminator too many times. But I don't know. A little bit scary to me. Number 3 in the World Wide Web of Weird. This comes from WNew.com. Not your average selfie. Louisiana plantation posts haunted picture. This is Myrtle's Plantation, very famous place. You can see, I mean, it looks straight up like African American woman in the reflection of the mirror. But I want to, they say they took the selfies. They said the Myrtle's Plantation at St. Francisville, Louisiana, is heralded as one of the most national haunted places. People traveling from all the world spend the night in hopes of being spooked. Yeah. We know. A lot of people know about Myrtle's Plantation. One group of women got their wish and documented on camera in the form of a selfie. On Monday, the Haunted Plantation posted a picture of some of the guests standing in front of a row of windows when an unexpected photobomb happened. What do you think? Is it the face of Chloe, the slave girl said to haunt the grounds, who has mysteriously appeared in several photographs over the years? And, I mean, we had one guest on that totally debunked a lot of that. And is it just coincidental reflection off the window? Well, I don't see how that's a reflection off a window from somebody else.
Jason, may I ask, the other photos they have, is it similar to this one or just another photo?
Well, there's the famous photo of looks like a black slave girl peeking around the corner of the building.
But not the same face, correct?
Well, you can see a face in the original one. I mean, it's not that clear. You couldn't see a face. It could be the same ghost if it is a real picture. I don't know.
I just can't get past the feeling it's like one of them overlays.
I know. It just seems too good to be true. I don't know.
Yeah,
We're just getting too skeptical nowadays. I mean,
you guys are doing better than me. I don't see a face at all. Maybe it's
It might be your connection. It might be hard to see for people. You can find this article at www.wnew.com.
Okay.
I hope it is. That's the holy grail of window ghost peeking pictures right there.
Yeah, it might not come through good because Jeff's sharing it and it gets pixelated sometimes on the live stream or on Google Hangouts. But if you go and look up at this article, like it says, WNEM.com is the website. And there's definitely a face there. It's not any pareidolia or anything like that. It's either real or it's been faked. That's as simple as that. All right, let's move on. I love the International Space Station. I don't have an article for this. We're going to show this footage really quick, but this comes from December 8th from Skywatch UK. This is the International Space Station. You're going to see this object fly by it here. It's glowing. For people listening on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, we stream out to there as well. To see these videos, we always have them on our Paranormal Soup webpage, or not Paranormal Soup webpage, have it on our YouTube page. Go to our Paranormal Soup channel under World Wide Web of Weird, or you can check it out on our Facebook page, Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, and I always post an edited version of the World Wide Web of Weird up there so you can see these videos. I love the International Space Station stuff. I don't have a NASA link for this though. This article, there was no article. This is just somebody said they captured monitoring the International Space Station video cam. It doesn't look fake to me. I mean, I don't know. It's something's flying by there. You know, what could it be that high? You know, that far up out of the atmosphere and floating around Earth. You know, I don't know. So they had a couple of these recently. Looked very similar. There was another one just like 2 months ago that looked just very similar kind of lights going by the International Space Station. So something's going on. I don't know. All right, number 5 on the World Wide Web of Weird is from dailymail.co.uk. This one is ghostly footage. Spooky moment. A child ghost stares at a paranormal investigator after emerging from a doorway in an abandoned corridor. Ghost hunters claim to have captured a child spirit stalking the corridors of an abandoned manor house. The team believe the eerie footage captured last month in Wentworth Woodhouse, Yorkshire, shows a child-sized apparition move across a hallway. Paranormal team Soul Reapers only spotted the spooky sighting after taking a closer look at the video after exposing 23,000 square yard building, and now believe it was the figure of a child appearing from beyond the grave. Again, this one might be really hard to see on the video. If you go find the video, it's up on YouTube. It's on our World Wide Web Weird playlist on our Paranormal Soup YouTube channel. Check it out. It might be hard to see on our version we're showing here, but you do see kind of like a little slight short figure, like it's translucent in the background. They circle it here, and it's still very blurry. But yeah, definitely worth checking out the video. Go check it out on YouTube. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, number 6 on the World Wide Web of Weird comes from thesun.co.uk. This was very viral. I saw a lot of people posting stuff about this one, and we've talked about it on here before. And Gavin Lee Davies, who we had early on our first season of this show, wrote the book. What was it? Ghost Sex, The Violation was the name of his book, and he got quoted, I think, in this article, or I'm not going to read the whole article here, but he even got a quote on it because he did a whole book, and it's a serious book. The title, people laugh about it, but it's really serious. The stories he told are very dark and very sinister and not all pleasant at all. But this lady thinks it is pleasant. This, like I said, comes from the sun.co.uk. Things that go boink in the night. A woman who claims she had sex with a ghost says it was the best she ever had. Cyan Jameson, 26, from Shropshire, I'm totally butchering that, told how she recognized Robert, who lived over 100 years ago, from a painting in the house she was staying in when he appeared next to her in her bed, and she sobbed when he left as she had fallen in love. Jameson, 26, a writer from Shropshire, told how she recognized Robert when he floated in her bed from a painting. Okay, she just moved into the rented property in Albersworth, Wales. I butchered that. Sorry, from North London, and had noticed his handsome portrait dated to 1820 hanging above the mantelpiece. I forgot to put the portrait in here. Sorry, guys. After their saucy spiritual encounter, Cyan said she sobbed when he left. She said she'd fall in love. She explained how she moved to the area after splitting up from a long-term boyfriend. Elsewhere I went, it reminded me of my ex, she said. Oh, wow. That ghost better just run for the hills. Start talking about her ex-ghost. Run for the hills, ghost.
Well,
Yeah.
there is a fairly well-recognized story about a woman in UK who was called Om Seti, and there's a book on it. And she claims that Seti the First came to her regularly.
Oh yeah, I mean, now if I remember that right, she also channeled him, right? Is it the same
I don't know
one?
that she actually channeled him, but she remembered so much of their life together.
It was like a past life thing or something like that.
Yes.
It was vaguely familiar. I remember hearing about that. Yes, and like I
Yeah,
said,
you can get that book on the internet. It's a very good story. It's a page turner. It's a really fun story. As a child, she kept telling her parents, "When are you going to take me home? When are you going to take me home?" And then one day they end up at the British Museum, and they get to the Egyptian section, and she plops down and says, "Okay, I'm home."
oh, that's just like that. One of my favorite shows is the Children Reincarnation show they did. I think it only had one season, but they had children with these stories like that, and it's so interesting. The little kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and my 1.5-year-old is never really. I don't watch football. He goes into and he's not around anybody else watching football. He goes to his grandfather's house, sees the TV, and he goes, football. I'm like, okay, I don't know. Maybe He does other things. He talks about planes and stuff like that. And I'm like, there's certain interests. You just wonder as a parrot. It's just my imagination. But let's move on. We'll move on. But it's such an interesting subject. All right, last thing up. This is I was going to end the World Wide Web with there, but this happened last night, so I had to add it. Let me get that screen up here. This is a UFO that was spotted in Colorado, if I remember right. Like I said, yeah, in Denver. It was Saturday night at 9 p.m. 9 Newsroom received well over a dozen phone calls, emails, and messages about a series of single-file lights that flew over the Cherry Creek, Washington Park area of the metro. We can now tell you Saturday's light show was courtesy of a group of 17C cargo jets. See, look how crazy this is. If I saw this, I would think it was, that's sure a UFO. It's crazy. Everybody saw this. Everybody thought it was a UFO, and I don't blame them. It looks crazy. Is this just a cover story, the cargo jets? I'm just saying, it's crazy. Double TX, they took off from Joint Base or Charleston Base around 7 p.m. Saturday. The large aircraft went across the country to Nevada for a training exercise involving halo drops, high-altitude military parachuting. The exercise was done in coordination with multiple air military installations and groups, including the 82nd Airborne. This was like all over, was viral last night because a lot of people saw this in Colorado. But if you saw it now, Jeff, you can definitely see this, but there's like a point. I don't know if you can fast forward to it where like they line up in a line here. Yeah, here they are. It's really, really crazy. Like people were flipping out over this. I mean, it's probably right, but look how like it flashes. You see that? What is that? How are the cargo jets doing that? This is really, really weird. There's some people that aren't buying the story, but the Channel 9 News there went and looked into it, and they said that's what it was.
A lot of stuff I've been seeing lately on different UFO sightings, especially from ICE, from the space satellites from up there as they're going. I've been showing you those feeds they cut. A lot of it looks like those weird glittering like lights that just go and then disappear like that.
Yeah, well, this is over in the Colorado, in Denver, right up in the night sky.
Yeah.
This is somebody's security camera that caught it. And like I said, they got thousands of phone calls, I'm sure. I mean, if a bunch of people saw it, I'd be freaking out, especially in the times we're living in right now, worried about North Korea and stuff like that. You see stuff like this in the sky. I'd be a little, like, kind of freaking out about this.
Concerned, yeah.
Yeah. But that's it for the World Wide Web of Weird, and I want to get to our guest here. So we're going to get to our first commercial break and get back to you, Maureen. I can't wait to do ask you about. Now, tell me. Is it Akashic or Akashic? How do you say? I'm sure I've been butchering years. I'm the king of butchering names, by the way.
You had it right the first time. Akashic.
Akashic. Okay. Wow. See, second guess myself. All right. Well, let's go ahead and roll to our first commercial break. For people on Facebook, we play music on Late Night in the Midlands. You will hear some quiet because the music doesn't play on Facebook. Facebook doesn't like it, of course, but we can play it on the internet radio. We got a license for that now. So listen on Late Night in the Midlands. If you can't watch, if you want to watch, go to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup and watch us on our Facebook page. All right, guys, we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, we have guest Maureen St. Germain. She had her lifelong interest in the Akasha Records resulted in her being granted access to this dimension that has been off limits to most of humanity for millions of years. Founder of the Akasha Records International, she's an extremely accurate Akasha Records guide and instructor. Widely known for her Amazon.com bestseller, Beyond the Flower of Life, she has been sharing her knowledge she has gained from her years of teaching meditation and research of ancient truths. Labeled a modern-day mystic in famous Wisconsin mystics, Maureen has taught in 15 countries throughout Europe, Canada, USA, Egypt, China, Japan. Her books have been translated into Russian, Italian, and Chinese. Her manifestation book, Be a Genie, teaches sacred geometry and manifestations based on source code and her discovery of the Phoenix sequence. Her clients love her velvet voice and her many guided meditations on topics such as Merkaba, I totally butchered that, letting go manifestations, and more. Insightful, compassionate, entertaining, funny, her primary focus is developing tools to support individuals in their personal expansion and their spiritual awakening. through trainings, Akasha records, sacred journeys, guided meditation CDs, essential oils, aromatherapy, and books. Maureen St. Germain leads a workshop of personal development and spiritual awakening. As a seeker, she shares her knowledge she has gained from her study of the ancient truths. And I can't wait to talk to her tonight about Akasha records, something I don't know a lot about. I've known a little bit over the years here and there that I've heard from people I've known that are into it, but I want to learn a lot more about this. It's so interesting. Let's get to our guest. How you doing tonight, Maureen?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Now, you have also, I didn't mention in there, you have a book, I don't know if it's out yet or it's coming out, Waking Up in 5D. Is that like the fifth dimension? It is out.
Yeah.
So
It's
go ahead.
it's a book on how to connect to the fifth dimension, how to get yourself anchored there, how to stay there, and all kinds of cool stuff about how the rules are different in 5D.
We'll get into that tonight for sure. And people, we will have open lines later in the show. Tell people, how did you get into this work? You know, what drove you into doing this? Were you having experiences since your childhood, or did it just something that kind of hit you later in life?
No, I think I was born this way. It's kind of a joke. My mother was clairvoyant. I think my grandmother was as well. And so there was, even though we were devout Catholics growing up, there was a great acceptance of my mother's intuitive skill. And, she would tell my dad stuff, or they would tell us later, your mother said, grandma, she had a dream about grandma and it came true, like that.
Now, so what got you into the Akasha records? How did you discover that?
Well, I had known about them because I've studied the Edgar Cayce material when I was in my 20s. And I was interested in it, but I hadn't really kind of, warmed up to it, I guess. And then I was teaching the Merkaba in Atlanta, and I got a chance to sit in the car and wait for someone, and I fell asleep. And when I came out of that sleep, there was a very clear message. You have a message from this other lady. And that's what you referred to on the intro. And so when I called the astrologer, she said, nope, I'm not supposed to update your chart. I have a message for you. And part of that message was you're being given access to a dimension that has been closed to humanity for eons. And so then, as I explored this, I asked, well, was I the only one? And I was told no, but you would be a way shower.
Now, you mentioned Edgar Cayce. That's probably where I first became familiar with it. My mom, she was, some of my interest in the paranormal definitely comes from my mother. I remember being a kid and finding this book, The Sleeping Prophet, like this old tattered, beat up paperback book. And I read that thing I was probably 10 or 11 years old. And I read that thing back and forth like, this guy's amazing. Like, this can't be true that he really did it. But it was, it's, if people have never heard of Edgar Cayce, you need to look into it. So many crazy things this man was able to do while he was asleep.
Yes, well, it was a talent that he apparently brought in. And what he found is that he could lay down and go into a trance and not remember the conversation, but then he would be spoken to, and it would be just like he was sleep talking. And he, his work was so remarkable that kings, leaders from all over the world would come to him. And not only that, but there's now a repository of information about all of the cures and all the remedies that were used. So, people who have health problems that they can't seem to get rid of, you can go out to the edgarcayce.org and look up the remedies. Some of them, it's easier if you're a member because they have a bigger research capability if you're a member, but it's not expensive. You're talking $20 to join. And I'm also involved in the Edgar Cayce Center in New York. I sit on their board of directors, and I teach there as well. I teach Akasha Records there.
Yeah, I always found it so interesting, the stuff he was able to delve into, like they tell him this person's going to be at this location, and he'd go look into their physical ailments and body. He'd come up with these cures nobody would ever think of. I remember one was a cure for cancer that involved, basically a rabbit, like you had to get a certain organ out of a rabbit and stuff like that. You think it's crazy, but it worked. It really worked. And now they found out that what he was prescribing, they actually found in the medical analysis that is actually part of a cure now for that cancer. I don't remember the cancer people, but I thought that was amazing.
I don't know that one. One of the Casey cure remedies that I use all the time is called a castor oil pack. And you have a piece of wool that you saturate with castor oil and a heating pad, and you put it over the gallbladder area. And no matter what you're sick with, it seems to help.
I remember hearing that one.
Castor oil is also called the palm of Christi, which is the palm of Christ. So, it's like a miracle thing.
One of the things I saw, I was reading one of the cures and remedies and stuff I looked up for psoriasis, and it had grape juice in there, drinking grape juice. And I got to get back into drinking grape juice because my psoriasis is getting bad in the winter, but it did help. It helped a lot, actually. So, it's definitely for people, if you've never heard of Edgar Cayce. I think most people probably watching my show have. They're in the paranormal. You can't miss them. But some people haven't, they're in the paranormal. They're still learning new things. And
a lot of people call him the grandfather of this spiritual movement. Really.
Definitely. I mean, we're talking, 1920s, 1930s.
Exactly. And another cool story that I like to tell is the fact that Edgar Cayce was a devout Christian, and he did not believe in reincarnation. And when he started channeling his past lives and explaining what he had done in past lives, he changed. He finally accepted it.
Yeah.
So can you imagine a reading in the dream time, or while he's laying down, and then be told that you were this famous Egyptian king and blah blah blah. Pretty soon you're going to have to buy it. And I think there's going to be a movie that's coming out. They've been working on a movie for a while. So hopefully
for a long time, I think they've been trying to make a good. There's not been a good movie on Edgar Cayce, and with them rebooting everything they do in Hollywood, and it seems like they're out of ideas. How could they have not really done a really justified movie about him? I mean, it's something amazing. I could get in the whole conspiracy thing. I don't think the pharmaceutical industry would like Edgar Cayce. Because
what's interesting to me is homeopathy, for example, is really big in Europe, and the pharmacy industry in Europe isn't running the show like it is here.
Right, exactly. And,
so we know there's a whole other way of life that's possible.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Edgar Cayce in his readings was showing people. He wasn't telling them to go to the drugstore and get this prescription from your doctor most of the time. He was telling them how to make the cures themselves.
Uh-huh. And actually, this was way before modern pharmacology anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Now, for you peering into the Akashic records, I mean, that's what Edgar Cayce was doing, right? When he was sleeping in a prophet, he was peering into those records.
He was accessing the Akashic records, yes. A lot of times he was actually accessing the body or the person who he was being asked to look at. So he would literally go into their body and read the field. And then from the Akashic records, he would pull the cure that would work for that person.
So for you, how do you peer into the Akashic records? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I use a ceremony. And the ceremony allows me to connect with the information about a person or a situation. And then I'm able to transmit the data through my guides. So it's a little bit like working with a reference librarian. In modern times, we're not supposed to, quote, go into the records as much as we are to go to the threshold and ask our questions. And there's a whole reason why we're allowed to go in the records, but think about the movie Back to the Future. And remember when Michael J. Fox was looking at this picture of himself, and then his mom's trying to kiss him, and the picture starts to fade and change? Yeah. And so that's why you and I wouldn't go into the physical records. And even it's not really a physical space as much as it is a vibrational state, you see.
So they don't want... You have to, is there guides in the Akashic records you have to kind of ask for the information to give to you? Yeah,
excuse me for yawning.
It's all right.
A Okay, so yes, we do ask. For example, as a channel for the Akashic Records, I would never open your records without speaking with you first and you saying, can you open my records and tell me blah, blah, blah. And secondly, even if you gave me that permission, I wouldn't necessarily be sharing that with anyone else. It's considered privileged. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if you wanted to ask about your kids, you could ask some information, but because they're underage, there's a lot of information that would not be made available to you or them. And then I tell people, wait till you're 18 or 16 before you have your own Akashic Records reading, because you're still making decisions about what you're going to be doing. And the Akashic Records, this is another thing people don't understand. Because there's multiple versions of the reality and there's multiple timelines that people are participating in, there's actually a possibility that you could choose one timeline without having information in the records. And then once you get information from the Akashic Records, you're actually able to choose a higher expression of that similar timeline, which would allow you then to move faster along your path of spirituality or path of ascension.
You're talking like multiple realities, parallel universes, other versions of ourselves, basically?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I am. Like you make a decision. A classic example would be somebody who makes a decision to split with their partner, and then they start experiencing themselves with their partner, even though they know they're not living with them anymore. So they're having, awareness of both. Now, that kind of experience, for example, happens as a result of regret. And as long as one or both of those two people have regret about the decision, you'll be funding an alternate version of the reality. I don't like exactly the word parallel, because parallel implies that they're identical. And I'm already saying they're alternate, the one where you stayed together and the one where you didn't. And so your regret funds the alternate version. Now, what usually happens is you're monitoring that. It's like you're running an experiment, like in a lab or something, and you're aware that one version of you is experiencing staying together, and the other version is the one you're mostly involved in, where you're not. And so you continue to explore that, and then at some point you come to the conclusion, I think I made the best choice. So then the regret evaporates, and once it evaporates, you're not going to fund it anymore because you don't need to see it.
So it's like by having the thought of, let's say, like you said, with a marriage, of like regretting this marriage, that starts to have a thought that creates a reality of divorce, like a reality where you got divorced, or a reality where you never even got married?
Regret on a decision, not a regret on a future decision. Do you see what you just did? You were talking about a possible future, and I'm talking about a decision that you've already made. Let's say someone has made the decision to split, and now they have regret about that decision. That would fund an alternate reality. Now do you get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what the consequences of that is what I'm trying to understand.
None.
None? It's just experience?
Yes, experience. Yes. And it's very interesting because we really are like running our own little labs, in that we're testing what will happen here and what will happen there, and we're exploring it. And if we need to run a thread somewhere else, we can. And maybe we'll have a memory of it in the dream time. Maybe we won't. Maybe we just feed it into our data set, and that data set changes our mindset. If you, for example, let's say you were going to go to a certain college, but then you got an offer from a place you really wanted to go to, so you made the chance and jumped. And then you realized maybe the smaller school would have been better for you. So you have some regret, but you still wanted to take this big opportunity. So you've taken the big opportunity, but you can have a little bit of regret on the other one, and you're going to continue to explore the differences of what you might encounter. Now, if you go far enough along and you say, you know what, I really did make a choice I don't like, I'm going to go back to that smaller school, then that has changed your mindset. So the benefit of having multiple expressions in the reality and multiple versions of the reality is that it allows you to build a level of comfort about your decisions and to be satisfied with your experiment, if you will.
All right, I kind of get it. And so with the Akashic Records, though, is kind of like I don't know, is it a predestination thing? Like well, I wouldn't say predestination. I would say all possible choices are mapped out there.
Oh, this is a very good question. All probable choices are mapped out and potentials are mapped out, but it's not infinite.
So there, they say like in some multiverse, I'm Batman, right? That's not likely.
When I first started out in this work, and I was going, I was moving into the public, I remember wanting to get my book written, and I was having trouble motivating myself, and so I started telling myself, well, there were other versions of me who also were working on a book, and I wanted to get published first. So that would get me out of bed in the morning. It would kind of be like my inner joke, right? And then when I got a little more wise, I'll say, it occurred to me that the other versions of me probably had already published years ago, and I'm the one that's lagging behind. So it's the benefit of understanding this is to move out of judgment of the decisions you are making and have made.
Just like you
And
like you said.
5D, there is no judgment. So
it's like an experience. When people talk about, what it's like, when they've had a near-death experience where they're pretty much on the other side, they talk about a life review. Is it kind of like that too? You go back and explore these choices, the regrets?
I don't think so. It's not like that at all. In other words, you go into the records, into the Akashic records, either with a person who's a guide, or you learn how to do it on your own, which is one of the things I teach people is how to open their own records. The benefit is that you get to ask the why question. And when we get our why questions answered, we're usually able to step up. Like if I say, can you hold your hand in the air? And you'll say, well, why? And I'll say, well, because I want to look at your hand. And then you might say, well, how long? And I'll say, oh, it'll take me 5 minutes. So you figure, okay, I can do that for 5 minutes. But if I just say, hold your hand up in the air indefinitely, you're not going to be able to cooperate, you see. So understanding the motive behind it is the human way. So one of the big benefits of being able to access your own Akashic records or to have someone go into your records is that you gain a greater perspective of what your life is about, what your choices were, and then you become more loving towards yourself, more patient with yourself. That translates into a higher way of being with everyone else. One of the ways that I explain this is when I was 16 and I was learning to drive, I was steering right and left. I was oversteering and the car was going back and forth. And the teacher said to me, you have to move your perspective point. And I had to think about what they were talking about, but I had to look further out in front of the car than when I was looking. And if you ride a motorcycle, you have to like triple that distance. Otherwise, you're going to topple over. Your perspective is way out there. So the Akashic records give you perspective on your bigger picture, and it helps you see the motives behind somebody else's actions so you can be more compassionate towards them. That allows you to be, at a higher vibration.
I can see that too. I always said one of the ways, if you really want to try to have peace in your life or try to be a civil person, you have to put yourself in other people's shoes. And I could see, the Akashic records helping somebody to do that, to understand
Absolutely.
Somebody else's point of view.
Yes. And it's interesting, not just their point of view, but their feelings. Like one of the stories I tell frequently is about a mother who had asked your guidance about what to do about the daughter that was still living at home, even though the younger kids had left. Everybody had a trust fund. The dad had died early. There really was no reason why the daughter had to stay. And the mom was looking for her privacy and wanted her daughter to move out. She's over 35. And plus the daughter was critical of the mom. It's this, this uncomfortable
Mother-daughter
thing.
relationship.
So, she's asking and she's told in her guidance, in her meditations, to be more patient and loving and to try to be understanding of her daughter being afraid. But then when she went into the Akashic records and asked the same question, the record keepers showed her how afraid that her daughter was. And they showed her, she was able to feel her daughter's fear. And when the mom felt the daughter's fear, she was so filled with compassion it stopped bothering her. And now they're best buddies. And another thing that happened is when she was in the Akashic Records, the record keeper said to her, she will always be there for you when you need her. And that had not occurred to her. You know?
Yeah.
So
No.
it's always good information and often more than you were expecting, but in a helpful way.
Now, for this person, you like took her on like a guided meditation that like takes her into that experience.
In this case, I was teaching a class, and so she was in the class and learned to open up her own records, and that's what I teach. I teach you a skill that you can take home and then work on your own and get your own information on your own history, whatever's going on for you.
So if I wanted to look into like past lives or, I mean, where does it end once you learn this ability? I mean, what can you actually take it to learn?
Well, number one, it's surprisingly easy to learn. And that's the thing that always boggles people's minds and how information comes in. I have quite a few methods that I use to help validate it. So you have ways or markers, as I call them, to help you know for sure you are in the records. And those markers are absolutely fabulous because they help you identify what's going on. There are record keepers that are assigned to this zone of the Akashic Records, and they're working with us. We each have our own group that works with us. And then when you start to read for other people, you might hook into their guides as well as your guides. There is no limit. The only thing that I did for myself, for example, was I wasn't interested in ever giving someone a reading for entertainment purposes. So if someone said to you, well, you know, you were King Lear, I'd say, well, you know, I'm not going to get into that because unless that is important for this lifetime, I'm not interested because I got into this work to be of service, to help others. And so I'm cautious about just doing stuff for entertainment purposes.
Well, it sounds like it gets very personal. You know, if you're reading somebody or teaching them how to do this, I mean, it sounds very, very personal issues. It's not, I wouldn't consider that entertainment as more like knowledge and experience.
If you're saying, well, I had another Akashic Record reading and she said I was Cleopatra, and I want to know if that's true, if you find that to be true. See what I mean? That's entertainment.
Yeah, that definitely is.
But I'll give you an example of something that happened in a reading. I have a lot of clients that refer people to me. And one of my students told her friend, you got to have a session with her. And the friend wasn't even into this kind of work, but she got talked into it. So she signed up and had a session. And the first thing the record keeper said to her was, you don't have to be afraid and get your life preserver on right away. You'll be fine in your boat and you can just relax a little bit. And she said, how did you even know I had a boat? And I thought to myself, now remember, I'm channeling the records. So I've moved my personality to the back and the record keepers are in the front. And so I almost said, well, I didn't know that. That was the record keepers that said that. And then at the end of the session, she said, I don't even believe in reincarnation. But if I did believe in it, how did I die in my last lifetime? And because this was a very sensitive question, I checked in with my higher self. And that's another tool that I teach, how to connect with your higher self and get 100% accuracy. And so I checked in to see if it was okay for her to hear, and I got yes. So I said, well, you drowned. And she went, and I said, but remember, the record keeper said to you at the very beginning before you had any questions, you don't have to worry. You won't have to go through that again. You did that once. But see, what happens is if you have had an experience like that, and then you come back in, you deliberately put yourself on a lake with a boat, and you're going to go through the same experience and try not to die. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they're saying, get over it. Just let go of that whole thing. You don't have to even do that. Just unhook from it.
Well, you talk about people that do like past life regressions, and they experience these things in a past life regression. Do you think it's better to have it as a reading and have somebody to deal with it that way than it is to go through like a regression where you like are almost physically reliving it. To me, that has always felt like that would be traumatic, especially if like you're reliving a drowning.
Yeah.
I've never been told.
Right, right. Well, my honest opinion is that people, I don't do past life regression, but it is my opinion that the people who do past life regression generally are handling it in a very gentle way. And if they see you getting excited or bent out of shape, they pull you back. And I will tell you that I've had a number of past life memories come in, where I was taken out. And in all cases for me, I was never afraid. It was almost like, okay, you already did the drama part. Now you're going to get to do it and watch. And that way you're resolving those unresolved emotions, because emotion is alive. It's chi that you've imbued with the purpose. And so when your emotion is high and you die, you've got like this big signature that really wants to be resolved. And you normally take that energetic print with you, and then you try to create an environment that allows you to have the experience, but have it work out in a way that pleases you.
I've talked about this on the show before. I've had 2 dreams in my life that I was like, if these were my past, if you dream about past lives, then these probably were it, because they were so vivid, so emotional. And one of them, I definitely died in it. And I was, I'll just say it. I've said it on the show before anyways, but I was a little black girl, and I was beaten to death by a slave owner. And I don't know why I dreamt it, but I was her, and it was so realistic, and it was so emotional. It was so awful. And I'm interested in your take on this, okay? Because in the dream, my mother was this older black, there was this black woman, it was my mother. I remember her in the dream. I remember her face and what she looked like. And I had another really vivid dream experience once in my life where I was in a very bad state psychologically. And I remember flying around this mall, okay? Like it was some weird mall, and I suddenly stopped, and there's this black woman sitting there just waiting for me. And I remember we had this deep conversation, can't tell you what it is now, but when later on I had this dream about a past life, my mother was her. I had this dream where she showed me things in the first dream about a possible future, you could say, that didn't happen, but it was like a warning. Like, if you go down this path, this is what's going to happen to you. And then later on, I had this dream, and she's my mother in this dream. I don't know who she is. I've 2 major dreams that I woke up completely emotional from.
Please forgive me, but it sounds like Neo in the Matrix. Remember when he was talking to the black lady?
Yeah, it's very similar. But mine was a mall. There wasn't it wasn't pure white or anything.
Yeah, right.
But
well, my take on it is that was an out of body, real time experience. Yeah.
When with meeting her the first time, the black woman.
Both times.
Both times.
Yeah.
But am I like accessing somehow some other realm? Because it really sunk into me. Like, it's one of those, you have those dreams that you'll never forget, that they're seared into your brain because of the motion in them. So do you think I was actually,
a whole new way? Right now you're thinking that you're a linear expression of who you are, and you're not. You're a multidimensional expression of who you are. So it's very possible that you could tap into another expression of you that is having that conversation with her.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yes.
I think of like a video game when you've got 5 men on the playing field and they're all doing different things.
Oh, yeah. I get exactly what you're saying, because I've had pathetic dreams too. Like dreams, just, stuff that's happened. I actually saved a friend's life. When I was 11 years old, he tried to slit his wrist. I dreamt about it before it would happen and stopped him. It was like it started out with deja vu. And the reason was because I started to realize I've dreamt all this that day, that it all led up to that event. And so there's that. Then I've had dreams where I've made alternate choices. You know, like that dream played out exactly, you know, everything played out exactly like as a dream was, but it geared me to go do the things I did. It was like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I've had ones where I made a different choice. There was actually one where I had a dream where my best friend talked me into going out on this date with this girl while I was dating my wife at the time. You know, I just started dating my wife, and I did, and it led down a whole weird, crazy dream path, another life even I felt like I lived. And I chose not to go out on that date. I told them, leave me alone. You're not, you know, I have a girlfriend. I'm not going out with this girl. And, you know, none of those things you always wonder, is like, was that dream showing me like an alternate life? I swear I had like a lot of stuff happen in that dream.
Yeah, I would say to you that that's a very good call. You have a very good handle on that. And that, you know, when you first got the offer to, you know, hook up with somebody different, and then you have the dream about where that would take you, you recognize you didn't want to go that way, and so there's no point going on a date.
I had the dream before the possibility even happened, which was weird.
Wow. Yeah.
I dreamt I went to this nightclub,
I try to get people to stop saying that word weird, especially because we don't say it in a nice way. We go, weird. That was weird. You know, and it's got all kinds of like charge on it, and it's just as easy to say, well, that was interesting.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I guess Weird Science being one of my favorite songs from my childhood, I love the word weird. Because I'm self-proclaimed weird.
Think about your intonation as you say it. You know, when you say I love weird, there's no energy. But that other way I was saying it, you know, to make fun, that's got a charge on it.
So when people call me weird, I can correct them and say, no, I'm interesting.
You could. Or you could just say thank you. Everyone else thinks I'm interesting.
Well, I own it. I just own it. I am weird. But, you know, I always wondered, you know, I think about these things. I've always loved the idea of multiple realities, multiple timelines. It's something that's fascinated me since I was a young kid. And I've always thought about my dreams and these pathetic dreams I've had. Like that instance, I had dreamt I went and met this girl at a nightclub because he talked me into going there, and we had this relationship, and it blew up with my other, you know, my girlfriend at the time. It became my wife now, you know, and it was real bad and all that stuff. And then it was like the next day I get a phone call. Hey, man, you should come up and hook up with this girl and my friend and all this. And I'm like, no. And then he had her call me, and she got on the phone. This girl, it's like, you should come out and hang out. She sounded just like the girl in my dream. And I was like, I bet I knew exactly what she looked like. And I got my friend to show me a picture, and it was her. It was her. That's what freaked me out about it, because I dreamt all this before I ever knew anything about it. You know, I knew what she looked like before I ever met her. I never did meet her. You know, I just saw a picture. I'm like, that's the girl from my dream. I'm glad I didn't go on do that.
Well, I would call that a precognitive dream of another version of your life that you chose not to take. And it's also, you know, there may have been something in your life where you were with this girl at one time in another lifetime, you know, like a past life, and you didn't choose your wife and you wished you had. And so you were given the opportunity to choose again. And this time you did choose your wife.
That's you said it perfectly. That's how I've always wondered if that's how it works.
Yeah.
That instance has always made me wonder, you know, is that how it works? Like I lived that life and this is another time around, you know?
Right. You did that once already and you don't need to do it again. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Some people call it the eternal return, you know, like you go through, you live your life and then you live it again. Is it something like that? You know, that we're living these multiple realities?
Well, you're exploring all the possibilities. So, for example, let's say someone says that you're all about learning how to treat women with respect. Let's say that's the drama you're working on. There might be a version of you that's very disrespectful to women, and another version who's an advocate for women. And, you know, those versions of you are going to kind of work their way towards the middle to get all of the data on that data set. Yeah.
So it's like a merger of realities in a way? Like,
well, what you got to stop doing is thinking of all of these as separate. It's more like the video game where all the players are feeding you the decision maker at the same time. So you don't have to say merger of realities because that implies this timeline and that timeline and that timeline. And when you're playing on, I've never played video games, but I had 4 sons and they played plenty of video games. And when they had multiple players on the board, you know, they're getting that data real time. They're not getting, you know, a separate line here and a separate line here. You would never, if you were playing a video game, you know, like a war game or something, you would never think of monitoring one soldier and just following what he's doing. You would be monitoring all the soldiers at the same time, right?
Right.
You're doing. So you're monitoring all the versions of you, all the expressions of you simultaneously.
But I'm this expression right now.
Right. So your focus is where you're at right now. That's right. That's your preferred expression. That's
So is
the
it-
point of singularity. That's the point of observation. And it is the point of observation that makes it real.
So it's like the quantum mechanic. Like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound?
Only if you hear it.
Only if you hear it. All right. Well, let's go ahead and I want to get to our last commercial break so we can come back and take any phone calls from the audience. So let's go ahead and roll into that, guys. Again, if you're watching on Facebook, we play music on Late Night in the Midlands you can't hear, so you have a little bit of quiet before we get into the commercials, so don't freak out. All right, guys. When we come back, we're going to talk to Maureen St. Germain. We're going to talk about more about the Akashic Records. If you got questions about it, she's not doing readings, but if you got questions about it, call into the show. This would be a perfect time. All right, guys, we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Tonight, we have guest Maureen St. Germain. We're talking about her ability to look into the Akashic Records. I've love the idea of multiple realities, timelines. I'm trying to understand it, wrap my mind around it. It's hard, it's that the sound of the tree falling in the forest. If anybody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? That concept, I think about it all the time. I'm just not smart enough to grasp it, I don't think. My mom's in the chat room right now. She's a Buddhist. She says, think about your Buddhist teachings. I've read a lot of stuff on that. It's still hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea of multiple realities all happening at once. And my minuscule little mind is just trying to grasp it. And I bet you are too. If you got questions tonight about the Akashic Records, multiple realities, how it's affecting your life, Maureen is happy to answer your questions. You can call in. There's a number of ways you can do it. You can call in by Skype. We got the Skype video chat or video line. That's Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat. That's the Skype ID. Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat. You can also call in on the Skype audio only line. That is OOJ Bland OO. That's OOJBLAND OO. Or you can call in by phone at 219-230-4444. That's 219-230-4444. Let's get back to our guest. And getting back to my guest, I think we lost her. Uh-oh, that ain't good. Let me check my messengers. We got a caller on the line already. How you doing tonight, Laura Lee? I see Laura Lee is there. We lost our guest. Let me check my messenger. Uh-oh, something happened.
I'm fine, actually. I'm having a hard time hearing you, but
Oh, uh-oh. Well, hold on a second. I'm trying to get my guest back. We lost her there for a second. She had warned me they've been having they've been having these little power outages, and during our sound check, she had gotten lost there too. So just hold on. We'll see. Maybe she lost power. Hopefully she gets it back. She's got a phone as a backup. We're getting a little feedback coming from your end, Laura Lee. It might be from Jeff. I don't know. Not too bad. Let me text our guest. Oh, let's see what happened.
yeah. Yeah, hang on one sec, guys. This should help. Just
Okay.
give me 1 second here.
See what happened. I just sent her a message. I haven't seen her. She might have lost power. I know she's got her phone. Hopefully her phone didn't die. If I have to, we will try calling her maybe on Skype. I don't know. We'll see. She might be trying to get back on. Trying to decide. Do I want to call her? Try calling her. She might be trying to
Or
get
I can
back
hang
on.
up and call on the phone in line if you want.
No, don't. Stay right there because I might have to use that phone in line for her. So stay right there. All right. Hold on. Let me see. Because I can't call her on Google. Maybe she's there.
Okay.
Hear the call of Skype. See if we get her on there. She might have lost her internet connection too, so I got backups. We'll see.
She might be just trying to reload something.
True. Okay. Yeah, didn't get her on there. Let's see.
Never fails when I call in.
We're doing so good too, and I like. All right, I want to get to commercial break so I can get her back. Get back and get because I knew the people. I got Chandra on the line too. We'll call her. How you doing, tonight, Chandra? You there too? I just hold on a second.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, hold on. We're trying to get our guest back. She's so interesting. I'm so into this show tonight, and this is like don't want to lose her. Hold on. Let me get to my notes and see if I can call her. She might, like she said, she warned me before the show that she's having these little power blips. I'm like, oh no. All right. Let me see.
It's my fault again.
No, it is not your fault, Laura Lee. It's not your fault. All right. Let's see. We got a cell number. We'll try calling her landline. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe her cell. Hold on. We'll try the cell. We'll see if we can get her on that way.
Doing? Can you hear me now?
I hear you, Marie. Yeah, we lost you. Did you have a power outage?
No, but
Hi,
we
Perry.
did lose.
Hold on a second. 1 second. Sorry. All right. You're there, Marie?
Yes, I am, and I lost internet.
Ah, that's what I wondered. I was like, either internet or power.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have backups. All right, audience, don't call in on the phone line. The 219-230-4444 is now down because we got Maureen on that line. Maureen, we already got 2 callers waiting. That people calling
wow.
right away. The first one is Laura Lee. She's calling in all the way from. Are you back in Canada now, Laura Lee? You're back in Ontario, right? No, not Ontario. Thunder Bay.
Oh, Thunder Bay is gorgeous.
I got that right, Laura Lee? She might have trouble hearing us. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm back home now.
Now, did you have a question for our guest
Thunder
tonight?
Bay, yeah.
I think she's a bit
Thank
delayed.
you.
She's a bit delayed.
No, I can hear you. There's a huge delay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Just ask your question and take it offline. Go ahead and ask your question because there's a huge delay on your end. So just go ahead and ask your question and then go offline from there. Uh-oh.
Okay. What I was wondering, Maureen, I'm so glad you're talking about this. This is a really big area of interest to me. I'm a light worker, actually, and I'm also working on my medical intuitive skills. And I heard you mention a bit how Edgar Casey was using this too. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions for somebody like me to better utilize the skills I have, because I've also been receiving a lot of signs from my guides, as well as a huge interest in the Akashic Records. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that, what I could use. Thanks so much for taking my phone call.
Thank you, Laura Lee. I'm sorry we can't have her respond back. Hopefully Laura Lee will hop on here really quick and hear your answer.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations, Laura Lee, on the work you're doing and the progress you're making. I can hear it in your voice that you've got a good connection and you're getting good information. there is a tool you can use to improve your work and take it up a couple of notches, and that is to learn the higher self connection the way I teach it. It's a 7-step protocol, and if you want to email me, Maureen@MaureenSt. Germain.com, and just put on the title Higher Self Protocol, and anybody who's listening, you can do the same thing. This is detailed in a book called Beyond the Flower of Life, chapters 4 and 5. Some of you have that book already. But if you haven't done this work, you are going to be very glad that I'm encouraging you to do it. Now, a lot of people will say to me, oh, well, I already have my connection. I don't need to do that. And my response is, do you rely on it 100%? Do you ever ignore it? Do you ever dismiss it? Do you ever wish you had followed it? And if the answer is yes to any of those questions, then you need this protocol, because this protocol will move you from trusting it to knowing. And the difference between trust and knowing is trust is expectation, like Jason and I expecting to be able to finish this on Google Hangouts, and knowing the sun is going to come up in the morning. There's a difference. And that is what I call 100% accuracy. So you do this protocol. It takes you 6 weeks. It is a practice cycle where you're playful, you have fun with it, you are not allowed to ask important questions. So like a child who's learning to shoot hoops at the foul line, you just keep throwing the ball there until you start to get the hang of what it feels like when it goes in. And through practice and repetition, you start to recognize the familiarity of certain things that occur. And this is all outlined very carefully in the book. And also the short version, the abbreviated version, is in the handout that I'm happy to send anyone who wants it. So that's one tool. And then another thing you can do if you're not doing this regularly is to meditate at the same time every day. And if you've got monkey mind, those of you who have monkey mind, I highly recommend that you consider getting some of the guided meditations that are made by people, including me, because those will help you quiet. And if you are inclined, learn the new Merkaba. It's a phenomenal tool that holds the matrix for yourself to be fifth dimensional all the time.
I used to meditate when I was younger. I was in my 20s, and sadly got away from it. And later in my later 30s now, in my adult life, trying to get back into it, I have that monkey mind problem again. It's like I got through it when I remember in my 20s, and I was doing it on a regular practice. Now trying to get back into it, it's just one that's a lot noisier household I live in with kids and stuff too. But that monkey mind is the worst part.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that if you choose to learn the Merkaba, and I'm not teaching it anymore, but I do have a DVD that people can get to learn it. It only takes 5 minutes to do, and it will literally double all the tools you have in your toolbox. So, like your intuitive abilities jump by double, your knowing ahead of time jumps by double, your connection jumps by double. It's remarkable. I had been doing meditation and stuff like what you're describing, Jason, when I was in my 20s too. And then when I learned the Merkaba, I felt like all the previous 20 years had doubled just from doing the Merkaba. It is phenomenal what it will do for you.
I haven't heard of it. I'm gonna have to look into that. But we do have another phone call on the other Skype line. So let me pull them up. We got Chandra here. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
And,
how are you?
Doing great. And you have a question for our guest, Maureen?
I do. My question is, I have like premonition dreams. Like I will dream about things and then they happen. Is that whenever we do that, are we visiting the Akashic records, or is that just something else completely?
Describe it to me again. You have premonitions?
Yeah, like I will dream about things, and it can be it's usually just really small things like conversations or little small happenings, and I dream about it, and then they happen, and I'm like, whoa.
That's really along the same lines of what I was kind of asking about it too. These dreams that we have these premonitions about, are we really peering into the Akasha records and another reality?
Well, there's a couple of pieces in here that will be interesting to you. In fifth dimension, time does not exist in a linear fashion like you are accustomed to. So you could actually hear something or see something ahead of time just by slipping into a higher vibrational state and then realizing that it's now showing up in 3D. And I describe this in the book, Waking Up in 5D. And a very simple way to see if you're doing it is when you're in traffic and you're driving a car, and let's say your third car back where the light has got everyone stopped, and there's people piled up waiting to cross the street, cars are waiting to go, the light changes, nothing happens, nobody moves, and you're just sitting there, you're in a, you're not in a rush, you're just watching, you're not even noticing that you're watching, you're just kind of relaxed. And then everybody starts to move. That's like a 3-second delay or a 5-second delay. And you're actually seeing the light, traffic light change before everyone else does. Because at the higher vibrational states, you're able to observe outside of time. So you're plugged into 3D, but you're also floating into 5D and participating in 5D and 3D simultaneously, which allows you to experience both. So the timelessness of the events that are about to happen are actually showing up ahead of time. So they're small little, they could very well be, pulling little pockets of stuff like that out of the timelines. If they're bigger type events that are more deja vu-y, then maybe you are tapping into your records. There are people who will tell you that the Akashic records are in your DNA. And this particular teacher that said this is highly respected. So I went back into the records and I asked, what's the deal? Because that's not what I was taught by them. And they said, well, it's more like this. Everyone has a local library and then they have the main library. And so the main library's got everyone's records of everything, and your own personal data set for maybe the immediate cycle you're in, the people you're in that are in your life and all of that are close at hand. And then everything else is like part of a bigger record.
Okay, I have a second question that kind of goes with it. I've done that since I was a child, like since I was small. Is that something that you're just born to be able to do, or is that something that you learn to do? Because I don't remember ever learning to do that. It's just something that's always happened.
You're always having these premonitions of something that's going to happen, and they're just little things like you dream Susie's going to call you and ask you to, like that.
Or little conversations that you have, and they're like it's just really strange because you're just like, what the heck? Why would I dream about that and that happen? Because it's not anything really meaningful. So when I do have like a bad dream or something, it always scares me because I think it was like really going to happen.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Well, then there's two things going on. If you've always done this as a child, I would say that you probably are meant to work with people at that level, and that you have known you're supposed to help people, and you should probably learn how to open up the Akashic records as a professional and get certified, so that you have you take your gift to another level, and you have this self-confidence and that the teamwork from other people to support you. You can get into that. And you could end up doing it without taking that training, but the benefit of having the training is then you have somebody, saving you a lot of time and effort. You're not going to make any mistakes, and you're going to, shorten your learning curve. So I would definitely take it as you came in with this gift already well-tuned. Everyone else has the permission to do what you're doing naturally.
Interesting. Very interesting. It makes a little bit of sense, but
I feel you, the Chandra.
I really think you should pursue this. I have a book I've written on the Akashic Records, and it hasn't been printed in English, even though it's been published all over China. It's kind of funny. I'm waiting for my publisher to take action here. You start praying to my publisher, take action here. Let's quit sitting on this. And I do teach online courses, and I do teach in-person courses in New York City, and I may be teaching a class in LA. I don't know where you're at.
I'm in California.
Okay,
She said LA.
all right. If
Well,
you're in the
I
LA,
know. LA's like 2 hours away, somewhere around about 2 hours or so.
it's doable for you then.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I'm in San Diego part time, so I haven't had enough of an interest in this area, but I'm not as well known here because this is kind of like our second home, and I really haven't built a network here. I do like teaching this work, and I'm very good at it, and I encourage you to get into a class somewhere, hopefully with me.
Jason, you'll post the links to her pages and stuff after the show, correct?
Yep. Yeah, and they're actually
Okay.
in the event description too.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
I'll get off so somebody else can call.
Questions?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you, Chandra. You have a great night. You know,
Thank
and
you. You too.
I feel her too because like same thing. I've had a lot of those premonition dreams, and they're a lot more often than not they're meaningless little things. Nothing life changing. I'll know I've dreamt this silly little thing that's happening right now or something like that, and I'll be like, why? What's the point of that? I don't know how she feels. So like she said, when you have a really bad dream, you feel like, is that going to happen?
Yeah, you make me laugh because when you say, why would I even dream that little thing? Turn it around and say, what is in this that I can know? What do I need to know here? Because I've had experiences also that just seem so random, and yet there's some kind of energy of coincidence around it. And when I ask what's going on, why did these two events happen back to back, even though they seem to be unrelated? I mean, they're related by content, but it isn't. I don't see the connection, And when I ask the question, what's going on, and that's another tool that I teach people. It seems simple, it's so obvious to ask what's going on. Not why did I dream it or why did this happen, but what is going on. And there's a reason for this, because when you ask the what question, it's completely open-ended, and there's no judgment on the outcome of the answer. Like if you go upstairs and your kids are still messing around, and you say to them, why are you still up? They're just going to laugh at you and
Yeah, pretty much.
Goofy, right?
Yep.
But if you say, what's going on up here? They're going to have to come clean with we're jumping on the bed. I don't know. But the what question is completely open-ended, and they could say, Daddy, we saw a ghost. But if you didn't say what's going on, you say, why are you still up? They might be too scared to tell you. But when you ask the what question, it opens the dialogue. So the when, why, who, or how are all limited. And the way they're limited, those questions, like the 6 interview questions, the only one that's not limited is the what question, because all the other questions are narrowing the focus to a category so that you can solve the problem.
We do have
like who ate the cookies? When were the cookies eaten? Why were the cookies eaten? You see what I mean?
Oh yeah, I have these similar conversations with the 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
Yeah.
Well,
the what question is the one question you want to ask. And also, they're too young for this now, but as they get older, instead of saying, are you going to do blah, 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 you can say, what are you going to do about blah, blah, blah. Very different.
Yeah. All right, we do have another caller on the line. We got Zach on the line. He's always got great questions. How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good, Jason. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, and I know you always have really good questions, so go ahead and shoot away at Maureen here.
Of course. I just have 2 questions. Maureen, it's very nice to meet you. My first question goes back to the Akashic records. I'm a guy that believes that there are multiple dimensions out there and that there's possibly an infinite numbers of Zachs, for example, out there. My question is, does each individual from each dimension of the same person, do they all have their own different records, for example? Or is there just one set of records for one individual regardless of the dimension where they're from?
It's like your video game. So each player has maybe 5 men on the field. Each man on the field has different points or tools, and they're available to the player to manipulate or to hand off or to scavenge, but the individual itself might not know of the other players that are all part of him. And I don't agree that there's an infinite number of Zachs. There is a probable number of Zachs based on your decisions and the choices you make, but it's not infinite, because infinite would mean you are constantly manipulating each moment and never going beyond the current moment, and you are. So your choices are limited by what you're considering. Does that make sense?
No, that does make sense indeed on that. Okay, and then my second question is, I was on your website a little earlier, and I read your article titled "Rejuvenate with the Season." In the article, It's mentioned that there are certain DNA strands that really they're present, but really they're not used. So my question to you is, and it's a multiple-part question, what are the characteristics of the DNA strands? What function do they service? And then what caused human beings over time to gradually just not use these functions? Can you just explain a little bit about those?
Okay, so I'll start with the last question first and say that our genetic manipulators who created the human species arbitrarily turned off our self-healing DNA, for example, so that we would age and not live long lives. There was a time, and we all know from studying Bible prophecy and things like that, that there were people who lived 600 years and more. So that's one thing. We did not cause that to happen. It was we were manipulated. That caused the self-healing DNA strand to atrophy. Now, the atrophy can be repaired, and I'm going to give you a way to do that right now because you're curious and you want to know, because obviously you want to use it. And it is a prayer that you might say at night, and it goes like this. I now command bolts of God's crystalline light blaze in, through, and around my self-healing DNA strands to cleanse, heal, and activate them, and to speed up the self-healing process, allowing them to expand and grow and to serve my body now. So what that does is undoes the turning off that somebody else did, because you have autonomy. I have autonomy. We have free will. Once we know something is there, we have access to it. So like a trust fund, you can't get at it unless you know it's there. But you can command that your body start to heal those DNA strands. There's also other DNA strands that younger people have, but older people don't have. And again, these are dormant in older people, and these are called the Genesis cells, kind of like Generation X, if you know what I mean. And you can command those to be activated. And then what I often do is I ask my entire DNA system to support the full activation of these Genesis cells. And that allows for skills that maybe aren't available to people. One of the things people don't realize is how very powerful they are. And when you start commanding what you want in a command, especially like when you go to bed at night, you're literally changing your reality and giving yourself a chance to be better than you were today.
Okay, yeah, definitely on that one. And I do appreciate you answering my questions, Maureen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Great to talk to you, Zach.
Thanks for calling in, Zach. Like I said, you always have really good questions.
I'm always grateful for calling on in, man. Thank you so much for allowing me to call in, and I hope you have a good night, okay?
All right. Have a great night, Zach.
I love
Bye-bye.
what you just said about, tomorrow being a new day. I always go to bed thinking no matter how how many obstacles I had today that it's almost like a reset. When I wake up in the morning, I see that sunrise. It's like a new beginning. I get to choose my attitude for the day. I get to choose how I want that day to go. And it's like a brand new start.
You know, that's really amazing because that's exactly what I was taught by the angels, that the sunrise and the sunset gives you a reset. And you are absolutely right. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. That sunrise comes up and you've got a brand new slate. So you rock. You got it.
So tomorrow's another day, Jamie.
Nice work, Jamie.
Thank you.
You know, I was thinking about when he was talking about the multiple realities and stuff. Again, this is my science fiction brain goes to. But you wonder. Well, actually, no. Actually, hold that thought, because there's another thought. When you were talking, Zach always has such great questions. It could lead down so many rabbit holes. You mentioned he mentioned the DNA. Mm-hmm. And you said, yeah, our DNA was changed. So peering into the Akasha records, have you gotten any kind of knowledge into the human past, like the ancient aliens theory? As I'm kind of getting what you're kind of going with there.
This is a very interesting question for you to ask me. My first hit when you were starting to ask the question had to do with, well, I'm really not interested in, information for entertainment's purpose, but because of my connection and that it's always on, when I hear stories, I can tell you whether they're true or what part of the story is true. Like a few years ago when there was a so-called earthquake in Charlottesville, Virginia, and also affected Washington, D.C., I knew right away that was not an earthquake and that there was a underground facility that had been destroyed. Oh, and wow. I have any proof of it, but I felt the tremor. I was in New York City at the time. I physically felt it. Then when I heard the news, a so-called earthquake in New York, right, it's kind of like when I hear news and I have an experience, I hear the news of what it's supposed to be. It's like part of me goes upstairs and validates what I've been told and then comes back and goes, that's not what happened. And I get the real story. So in a way, the ability to stay plugged into the Akashic Records has come from the years of work that I've done in the Akashic Records and the devotion I have given it to teaching it, and my own inner work, my meditation work and my prayer work that allows me to maintain that status. Kind of like, if you go to the gym on a regular basis, your body remains strong and svelte. And that's what's happened for me. I've gone to the spiritual gym, if you will, enough that I am maintaining that. And I continue to do that. I have a big devotion to my spiritual practices. So for whatever reason, I took it up a couple of notches and am on all the time. So even when I'm not supposedly reading the records for someone, I'm often giving information that is from the records because that's where I'm getting my information. I will tell you, when I was in high school, I'm old enough to say that, we didn't have the internet till one of my kids was going to college. So it kind of dates me, but what I can tell you is when I was in high school, I saw that there was a central data bank of information that we would all have access to, and that we would be able to know what we needed to know in a moment's notice without having to remember. And the way that would play out is, for example, you meet somebody you have a good interaction with, maybe you guys go out for dinner and you make friends, you say, oh, we should stay in touch, you're a really cool guy. And then, time goes by and you forget about this person and you don't make the connection you had hoped to make. And then, 3 years down the road, you're in the grocery store or someplace and this person walks up to you and says, hey, you remember me? We talked, blah, blah, blah. And you go, yeah. And you think to yourself, I know this person. I wonder what his name is. And as soon as you make the wonder thought, which is the same as the what thought, the answer floats in. And you go, oh, yeah, you're so-and-so. And you did this and this. And they go, yeah, you have a great memory. But it wasn't memory. It was literally accessing the records. And that's what we're all going to be able to do. And what we're doing now is learning how to do it purposefully. You know, it's like everyone eventually figures out, this is kind of far out, but everyone eventually learns how to walk or talk or whatever. But if there's people around, it's a lot easier. If there's, you know, children around helping them, they can see how the kids are walking and they learn from that. And that's us. So the pathways that we make for ourselves also help each other.
So with like the kind of like what you said with engineering our DNA, it's just something you've because you're kind of always on when you've seen that come across like in a book or something like that. You kind of know it's true because of your connection to the records.
Exactly, that's well said. And I have known about these things probably all of my adult life. So a lot of these things I knew without knowing how I knew. And then when I come across, you know, David Wilcock or Corey Good or Michael Salla or any of those people who are giving us good information about what we're being told has happened, or the ancient alien stuff, all of that to me is, I feel validated. But it's not like I'm hearing it and saying, oh yeah, that's true. There are other times that my husband will come to me and say, is this book true? And one time he actually came to me with a book that was pretty amazing. And he says, you know, can you tell me if this book is an accurate piece of information? And I immediately connected with my divine self and turned to him and said, we're going to go chapter by chapter. And then each chapter, 20%, 80%, 60%. And we got all done. And I said, I have never done anything like that before in my life. That is hilarious. And it was important to him because he had read the book and was very struck by the guy's information. And that's something else that this is why I'm so strong about learning to connect with your higher self to get 100% accuracy. And that is because each of us has to develop that connection anyway in order to operate our fifth dimensional self, to operate our 5D vehicle or 5D bodies. And so you have to be able to talk to your higher self at that point. You're the navigator. And if you learn how to do that now, then you make it easy on yourself when we shift a little more and everybody becomes fifth dimensional. So it's in everyone's best interest. The second thing is there are a lot of spiritual teachers out there who are channeling information from outside entities, you know, ETs, ghosts, whatever you want to call it. And those sources could be providing imperfect information. And the only way to know for sure is to have your higher self connection going so that your higher self grabs that one little piece that's the exception or the piece that's not right and calls it out. So you can still learn. You know, it's like when you go to the grocery store and you buy all the lost leaders in a store you don't normally shop at, you don't feel bad that they charge an extra $3 for the favorite eggs you like, because you're not going to buy them there. You're going to buy them at your regular store, but you're going to take advantage of this lost leader and get all the stuff you can that's extra cheap. So it's a little bit like that. You look at all the teachers, including me, and say, okay, we don't have to believe everything they say. What we should believe is what feels like it's a match for where we're at. And let everything kind of just hover around, but not to buy into or swallow stuff that doesn't feel like it's a match.
So trust your instincts, trust your gut, basically.
Not only trust your instincts and trust your gut, but learn how to get 100% accuracy so that your instincts are not overruled by someone else's power, or not overruled by entities, or not overruled by your preferences or habits. You know, my husband is a West Coast guy, and I'm an East Coast woman. And when he came along and started pursuing me, I actually went to the altar and said, what do I do with this guy? And I was told, build a bridge. That had never occurred to me, Jason. I'm conservative enough that even though there's lots of New Yorkers that have homes in Florida, it never occurred to me that I could have an East Coast home and a West Coast home. But that's what I have. That's what Spirit wanted for me. And if I hadn't been open to asking the question, I would have never heard the answer.
What you mentioned the fifth dimension. What is being 5D? I mean, what is the fifth dimensional experience? Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Well, 5D is a brand new game. So if we've been playing basketball, we're now going to play soccer. Or if we've been playing checkers, we're now going to play, chess. So the rules are different. It's still a board game. It's still a game, but the rules are dramatically different. That's number one. Number two, we're using both the heart and the head, not one over the other. The West, especially the last 500 years, we have allowed the mind to rule and overcome every other aspect. So when your intuition tells you one thing, but the person is telling you something else, you depending upon your relationship with that person, you're going to either believe them or not. Like the time that my sweetheart at the time said to me that he wasn't involved with anybody else, but my higher self had already told me that, showed me, I was seeing it. And, a couple of days later, I'm at a workshop and I'm explaining, about the higher self class, the higher self work and how to use it. And I made a comment like I've, worked with my higher self and followed it, purposefully since this date. And inside my head, my higher self says, no, you haven't. And I'm trying to have a conversation with as the speaker, and now my higher self is talking to me. So I have this three-way going on. And it was pretty wacky. And so I said, well, what? What? And they said, well, when the guy said, no, that wasn't true, you believed him, even though your higher self told you otherwise. And I thought, oh, dang. So then, I had to write my sweetie a note and say, look, this is what happened to me. And I believed you because I love you. And I now have to withdraw that belief because my higher self is telling me again that such and such is happening, and then I need to believe my higher self. And I wasn't mad. I was just, saying, look, this is what I see happening. And he wrote me back and said, I forgot who I was dealing with. It was very funny.
What's the best advice you give for somebody to know? I mean, how do you really start to tune into your higher self, that it's not just your imagination, that it's really this higher self voice in your head that's giving you 100% truth, that it's not just your instinct.
The way to do that is to follow the protocol that I developed. This is a six weeks commitment that's fun and easy. Anybody can do it. All you have to do is write me for the protocol and I will give it to you at no charge. I have courses on it on my website. I teach it in every single class I teach because I insist people have this as a skill set on any work they do with me. Then they don't have to even take my word for stuff. They can validate it within themselves. The fast and easy way is to learn the protocol and follow it. It's really very simple. You just do this, you follow this set of 7 little ways of operating. You only ask unimportant questions. And it's this little protocol you follow. And you're playful. And that will take you to the level of perfection. One of the things that people do is they tend to test their intuition. So even if they do follow it, then they're testing it. Was that right? Will the light change before I get to it? And so they're constantly testing themselves to make sure they're okay. Well, that's all being done in ego. When you're playful, you don't care. A 6 or an 8-year-old, they don't really care whether they win the game. They just want to play with you. They just want to be on the board game with you and have fun moving their little token and counting the steps. They don't really care if they win or lose. And that's what we have to do. We have to allow ourselves to take it down a couple of notches and not keep score, not worry about whether we've got it right, and give ourselves that 6 weeks practice. And it takes 6 weeks to build new DNA, which is why I ask people to do the practice for 6 weeks. And then after 6 weeks, the sky's the limit. You can ask anything you want. So one way that you can put yourself in a 5D state, which makes it easier to feel your higher self, is this lovely little prayer called, I am asking for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I come in contact with.
And that's it? It's just a prayer?
Yep, that's it. That changes the reality dramatically. And it means that everything that you do then, it's like you're in the bank, you see the bank teller and the person in front of you have a little interaction, and you think, oh crap, she's in a bad mood, and I'm going to get her. But if you've done the prayer, that won't happen. What'll happen is when you walk in the bank, she suddenly feels your yummy energy, and she's all smooth and nice, even to the person in front of you. And even if she isn't, when she gets to you, she's smooth and nice. I sat down at a restaurant the other day at an airport, and they have all these open airport thingies with the iPads, and it was goofy because they were trying to give me a discount if I used my airline number, and it got complicated. And the guy came over to help me, and we didn't sort it out. And then another guy came over to help me, and we didn't sort it out. And a woman came over to help me. We still didn't get it sorted out. A fourth person came over, and we finally got the order placed. And so now everybody's kind of gone. And I turned to and smiled at the lady sitting next to me, because we're like in a bar, just sit and say hi. And she said to me, when I sat down, nobody talked to me. When I sat down, nobody helped me. When I came in, nobody said, hey, when they brought the food, or that the food was on its way. And I looked at her, and I didn't get it, what she was saying, because I'm so blissed out, because that's how I am all the time. And I said, really? I didn't have that experience at all. And she shook her finger at me. She said, I know, I saw the whole thing. And that's when I started to laugh. And I said, well, you want to know my secret? And she said, yes, I do. And I said, well, I just asked for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I come in contact with. And sometimes I remember to say, and everyone I'm in contract with. Now, the cool thing about that is then, maybe I don't talk to my webmaster every day, but I'm in a contract with him. So I want him to have a good day too. Isn't that cool?
So if you say that, you're kind of making everybody's day better.
Yes, you are.
You might have made that woman's day better by giving her advice in the airport.
Absolutely, of course. Besides, it's always nice to be friendly to somebody and have a sweet conversation.
Which we have less and less of in this world, I swear.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on that, Jason. You start saying that, and you're going to have more and more. Because I always have good experiences with people. I always have these sweet conversations. I always have these yummy opportunities to chat with people or to interact in a very positive way. And it is so wonderful. And all you have to do is stop scorekeeping all the stuff you don't like and say that phrase once a day.
So it's basically you're putting out a positive energy, a mindset to attract.
When you say, I'm
life.
asking for a day of heaven on earth, the day of heaven on earth is the same as 5D. And remember when you said, what is 5D? What is that like? And I said, well, the rules are different. It's a different environment. There is no polarity in 5D. There is no right or wrong in 5D. There is no good or bad in 5D. There is no karma in 5D. So there is no drama in 5D. Doesn't mean things aren't going to happen. It means that things that happen are handled in a smooth way. And when you claim a day of heaven on earth, you're literally claiming a day of 5D. And initially, when I first started trying to explain to people what 5D was, I said to them, well, think about what the traditional churches or synagogues will tell you heaven is. Well, that's 5D. Your communication is cool, you're connected to God, you know what God wants, you know what you want. Conversations with relatives go smooth. It's a different environment. And the other thing that happens in 5D that's quite dramatic, in my opinion, is that you are so aware of everyone else's experiences at the same time as your own that you can't let an experience go by without making sure that you are watching their needs be met at the same time as you. So I'll make a kind of a joke and say, I had a coworker one time who was complaining about the fact that he had sold his really hot sports car to his son for a song, and he had hoped to get quite a bit more money for it. And I smiled at him and I said, well, Ray, just think how proud you would have been of your son if he'd gotten that deal from a stranger. And he looked at me, his eyes got really big, and he started to laugh. And I said, exactly. So that's the old way. If I get a better deal, you get shortchanged. The new way is, I want to buy your car, you want to sell your car. You want a certain price for it. I've got so much money. And we keep talking till we're both satisfied that we can take care of each other.
It's just kind of the rule you apply to life with your interactions with other people.
Well, it's interesting that you put it that way. It's not a rule I apply to life. When you're 5D, that's the only way you can think of being.
So it just kind of happens on its own when you're in 5D?
That's right. It just happens on its own. It is your normal. It is your new normal. That's kind of the joke. That's why I keep saying it's a different game, because your normal changes. What you and I consider normal in the old days, was dog eat dog. I got to get ahead. I got to be ahead of you, blah, blah, blah. The new way is, I want to know how you're doing. I want to know if you're okay. I want to know if you can get what you need. In the new way, and you know this from your experiences, and people are being 5D right now a lot. And I'll give you an example. If you had an equipment breakdown that you really needed a part, you could call another radio DJ that you know and say, look, buddy, I'm in a bind here. Is there any way I can, bum this part from you for tonight, and I'll give it back tomorrow until I get a new replacement? And they'd say, sure. How can I get it to you? They wouldn't even hesitate. Right?
Well, yeah, I've already had that happen with the show in a way.
Okay, there you go. I nailed it.
Yeah, I've had 2 mixing boards fry out on me, and I had people, like Jamie here and others who chipped in and bought me a new mixing board to keep the show going.
Yeah,
I didn't ask for that; they did it, and
Exactly, and that is because in 5D you care about others as much as you care about yourself. This does not mean that you or I are in servitude to one another. It means that I care about my welfare and I care about your welfare equally.
and
then I don't have to choose. I don't have to tell myself there's not enough. I can choose to recognize there's plenty.
I'm one of those people that I've always felt I'm very empathic, and when people are going through things, I feel like I feel what they're feeling sometimes. And I even get angry, when I feel like a person's, even a stranger is being unjustly treated. I'm always like one of the guys that roots for the little guy kind of thing. I don't know. I just have this empathic way. I get angry when people are, trying to be controlled by somebody else. It's one of my big pet peeves. It could be a complete stranger and somebody's trying to control them. I don't know. I have an immediate empathic response to it.
Well, what I will say to that is, part of that is your embodiment. You chose to come in to be of service, to help people wake up and to help people get the knowledge they need. And when you see that people don't have the knowledge they need to make a good decision to take care of themselves, you are outraged because you don't want them to be taken advantage of. And that's understandable. What I would recommend that anytime that happens, you also start offering a prayer or ask the legions of light to step in and assist that person the best way that they can be. Because a lot of times it isn't meant for you to be the knight in shining armor,
right,
as much as it is that you can call in the light. It's just like, because I live in Southern California, I've gotten a lot of phone calls from friends asking me how I'm doing and how I'm doing with the fires. And my response is, let's pray for the people that are in trouble or having to be evacuated or
right,
whatever. And, we make all these prayers, and then I'll say, I'm fine. But I want to use it as a cue to remind me that I can do something to help people. And so when a person encounters the abuse, let's say, or the misuse of power, you can actually call in Archangel Michael to protect that person. It's very appropriate. You can ask your higher self, once you have a good connection, am I to intervene? You can ask, is it in my place to step in here, or am I just to be the observer so I don't let it happen to me? There's lots of things that sometimes we think we should take an action and we shouldn't, and there are other times we should take an action and we don't. So that's another reason why you want your higher self connection, because sometimes you don't know. One time I had a prophetic dream, kind of like what you had with your friend committing suicide, and it involves a family member. And I had to ask my higher self, is it appropriate for me to even tell this person? Because I didn't want to interfere with free will, and I didn't want to assume that just because I knew about it, that I had a right to speak up about it. And that's something that people don't often understand. Just because you have the knowledge does not mean you have the right to share it. And what I tell people, especially people who are very enthusiastic, look, if you know a lot and you're very enthusiastic about the new knowledge you have, spirituality or anything along this line, and somebody comes up to you and asks you a question, if you give them the full Monty, they're going to run off. But if you say to them, oh, well, the reason I'm so happy is because I meditate. Where do you want to go for lunch? And you change the subject right away. You've answered their query, but you've not pressured them to join your club. If they're going to pursue interest, they will come back to you. They will ask you, I really want to know what kind of meditation you do. I'm very interested in that. And they'll come back a second time. So the first time they've opened their mind, they notice you're different. They're commenting on it. They're giving you feedback, and you're giving them feedback on why that is. But the second time, they've opened up their heart. And when their mind and their heart are both open at the same time, that's when they're ready to act on it. And everybody who's done this, where they've spoken up, when somebody asks them a question and that person runs off, they run off scared, you've told them something you shouldn't have, or you've gone too far in some way that you didn't intend to. And my response to that is, just don't be so quick, and make people ask you twice, and keep track. And until they ask you twice, you give them the short answer, the sweet answer, and change the subject. And that way, you make a room for them to come to you later and see you as the expert,
Now,
at least in the moment.
I want to make sure we only got like a minute left. I want to make sure you get all your information out there again, and you have anything else you want to give to the audience or tell the audience.
Okay, so number one, I highly recommend that you start saying, all of you who are listening, start saying, I'm asking for a day of heaven on earth for myself and everyone I come in contact with. It will change your day. You'll have a wonderful day, even when there's craziness going on.
I'm going to try it.
Yeah, and then next, I want to encourage you to check out my website or my blog, and that information's on your Facebook page, I believe.
Yes.
But it's MaureenSt.Germain.com or MaureenSt.Germain.blog. I also have a free meditation that anyone can download, and I actually have a couple of free meditations. The one that's on our homepage is the Divine Government Meditation, and that's because I like to tell people, don't just complain about what's going on in the government. You can do something about it, be part of the solution. You can say a prayer for leadership. And that like 11-minute meditation takes you all the way from, the person you live with, your boss, all the way up to the head of state. And it's very powerful, and it's very wonderful because it changes the energy for you and for them. It helps them be better. Finally, you can go to bed at night asking to wake up in 5D. I am waking up in 5D.
Well, we need a lot of prayers right now for leadership. I won't gonna say anything more than that, but yeah, I want to try these things. I definitely am interested in it. A lot of things you said tonight, Maureen, really resonated with me. Maybe it's my higher self saying, "Hey, listen to this lady." But yeah, a lot of things you said tonight really resonated with me a lot, and I'd love to have you back on the show again to talk more about it because time does fly by, and we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much for coming on, Maureen.
My pleasure. It was a delight to speak with you and your audience. Very, very clever people who have great questions. Thank you.
I have one of the best audience, one of the best chat rooms. Thank you guys for calling tonight. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will be back next Sunday. I believe that's the 17th. Yes. We will be back with Jason Emmerich. Some of you guys in my chat room know him as a paranormal investigator. We'll be showing some of his evidence and talking about his investigations. And then after that, we're going to be on a 3-week break. It's going to kill me, but it looks like we'll probably not be back for 3 weeks because we got Christmas on Sunday and we got New Year's Eve, and then I have inventory at my work. So, yeah, probably going to be gone for 3 weeks. They'll have reruns of the show up on Late Night in the Midlands radionetwork.com. If you just have a little, missing us, you can go to their website or listen on TuneIn or on, you can listen to on the Paranormal Talk Stream app. You can listen in on those Sunday nights. We'll be replaying the show then, but it'll be probably a 3-week break. So we got one more show, and then we're going to have our season break, you could call it. Thanks again, Maureen, for being on the show. Thank you, Jamie D, for being a great co-host that you are. Thank you, Jeffrey Chan, for your video engineering skills. And we will be back next Sunday with Jason Emmerich. Have a great night. See you next Sunday. Small possibility. One thing, too. I also thought about this. Might have a New Year's Eve show. An ITC show. I don't know. I promised my wife we'd spend New Year's Eve together if she doesn't work. If she works, then I might do an ITC show. If she's not here to hang out with on New Year's, then I'll be hanging out with you guys. So that's one possibility, but don't get your hopes up. But otherwise, we'll be back next Sunday. Jason Emmerich, talk about his paranormal investigations, the great evidence he's been sharing. He's been tagging us in it, seen it. He's got some great evidence. So we'll be back next Sunday, guys. Have a great night. See you then.